so then there's another way that is a fun way to make 4 triangle squares at one time. This one actually has a little bit of a formula to it. Now, I'm not a mathematician. I just know the formula. I don't know why it works. It just works every time. So you are going to take the cut size, which is 2.5, and you are going to divide it by 0.64.
Oh.
Equals, so when I did that with this, I did 2.5 divided by 0.64 equals, it was about 3.9 something something.
Okay.
So I cut a 4-inch square. And so don't ask me why. Mathematicians out there are going to know why this works. But that's the formula. And so the easy part about this method is, and if it's okay, I'm going to just come over here and sew it.
Absolutely.
And so the easy part of this, we're going to take our squares right sides together, and we do not have a drawn line because we're going to sew 1/4 inch all the way around the outside of this. And so this is a great technique for beginners, and if you're not super confident with that 1/4 inch, when I am stitching and piecing in general, but especially when I'm making triangle squares, I really like to dial down my stitch length. I stitch at about a 2.0. A lot of times our sewing machines will naturally, I'm going to lift that up just a little, they're naturally going to turn on with a 2.5 stitch length. I like to piece with just a little bit tighter stitch length, especially with that triangle square when we are cutting those apart, or pressing them rather to one side. It really gives it a little more stability in that seam, and so that was pretty easy.
So you want to pivot when you get to 1/4 inch from the end.
Yes, that's a good point.
How do you find that? You just kind of eyeballed it.
Well,
right?
I kind of eyeballed it, but when you turn it, you can see the edge of your 1/4 inch piecing foot.
Right.
That's why I lifted it up the one time, because I'd gone a little bit too far.
And that's okay. If you just need to scoot your fabric back just a little bit, that's okay, right?
Yes, and if you felt more comfortable just sewing right off the end of that square and then starting again, then that's okay too.
Okay.
I was just being lazy. And then do you see how we have just a little bit of rippling of the fabric? It's always good to press those pieces before we cut them.
Okay.
It's just going to set those seams and kind of lock those stitches in place and make it actually easier to cut, because it's it. And so then
Really
this
nice.
way, yes, so you're going to cut through that square on the diagonal.
So
And from corner, or from, I guess we call it, from corner to corner.
corner to corner.
Yeah.
And that rippling probably is because we've got a lot of bias going on here, right?
We do. And then sometimes just sewing the fabric, the thread's going to just kind of tighten up the fabric, and so it just, fabric has a little move.
Sure
Give
does.
to it. So now we've got 4 triangle squares, and so there's a little bit of disadvantage to this technique for traditional piecing when we're putting 2 pieces of fabric together and sewing them up, and that is that these edges are biased.
They're biased now.
Because we've cut it across.
And you'd never do this when you're actually piecing it, but see how it stretches quite
Yes.
a lot, because that's the bias there. So again, you'd never
Yes.
want to do this when you're actually piecing, but just to kind